Does your child experience difficulty in learning, reading, and understanding? Experts call this condition dyslexia. Today on Sound Health, we are looking at how to cope with dyslexia. I'm Olasunbo Modupe. Welcome to Sound Health. Glad to have you stay with us on Sound Health today. This week, Ben Arikpo, an applied psychologist, a brain trainer, and an expert in managing dyslexia, will put us through how to cope with the condition. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's actually a pleasure being here.
Okay, to start with, what makes a child dyslexic?
Dyslexia is a brain condition. If they want to put it in medical terms, they will say neurological condition. And being a neurological condition, it simply means that the person has a brain condition that makes them struggle with reading, writing, spelling, and comprehension, very broadly and simply put. But in very technical terms, we will say they struggle with language-based activities, anything that has to do with word. For instance, the word itself, dyslexia, D-Y-S, dys means abnormality in Greek. And then, of course, lexia means language. So when you hear dyslexia, that means an abnormality in the use and processing of language skills. And so people with dyslexia would show tendencies of a struggle or difficulty with reading, with writing, with spelling, and with comprehension. And very often also it does come with attention deficit disorder or attention deficiency hyperactivity disorder. So dyslexia is one of those conditions that just makes people, you never know, because it is not a physical disability, you never see them, they're not showing any things that are different from other people. They are bright, and in fact, one of the things we look out for is that they are above average intelligence. They are very intelligent, they are very smart, but the challenge we face is that they are unable to read, write, spell, and comprehend. So that's why most people think that it's just, oh, they are just being lazy. No, they are not lazy. It's just that their brain is wired in a way that they struggle with these things I just mentioned.
Kindly share with viewers causes of dyslexia. Can it be hereditary?
Technically, I say technically, there are just two causes. One of the major one is genetic. Dyslexia is a genetic disorder. It's a challenge that you inherit from your parents. And when we say inherit from your parents, it may not just be your direct parents. It may be that you are inheriting it from your grandparents or from your great-grandparents. One of the people in your line, either from the mother's side or the father's side, might have shown tendencies of dyslexia, and therefore it comes down in that gene. So that genetic disorder genetically transferred to that person. So that's one cause. The second cause is traumatic brain injury. And this is one of the ones that we find very common in our society. People whose brains have been traumatized, either in the process of conception, people who are prone to alcohol, drug use during conception. They don't know they are doing something to the brains of the fetus because a brain condition, as I mentioned. So they do have this predisposition that when they take alcohol, drugs, and etc., they could be damaging that particular part of the brain responsible for these features that I mentioned. In addition to that, we have found that there's an association we are finding between people who have stayed too long in labor. When a person stays too long in labor during the birth process, when the fetus stays too long in labor, a woman, oh, okay, because your imam or pastor say you must deliver like a Hebrew woman, so don't agree to cesarean section. What tends to happen is that then they stay too long in labor, and as a result of that, the child gets distressed. In that process of the distress of the fetus or the child who is about to come out, there is a deprivation of oxygen to the brain. And that deprivation of oxygen, aphasia technically called, can result and does result in a traumatic brain injury, to the point that when the child eventually gets born, that's why you find that when they are born, they don't cry. We see that condition in the maternity wards a lot. And so the doctors and nurses will panic and start to turn the child upside down and hit the child to ensure that the child starts crying. What are they trying to do? They're trying to get oxygen. When they turn the child upside down, they're trying to get oxygen into the brain of the child so the child can start crying. So that process, even if oxygen is deprived from the brain for that 5 minutes or less, that can also result in a traumatic brain injury. And of course, the other things that's associated with traumatic brain injury is the way we beat our children at home and in school. Where do we beat them most of the time? On the head. And that part of the brain that part of the head that you're hitting, knocking and spanking and hitting with a cane or something else, could be part of the brain that's responsible for reading, writing, spelling, and comprehension. And so the child will come down, or the person will come down with traumatic brain injury. So these are the two causes of dyslexia.
Okay. What are some of the signs and symptoms of this disorder in people?
Okay, let's start from even when the child is being born. I've mentioned already one. The child doesn't cry when the child is born. Although that's not a typical case of dyslexia alone, but it is an indication from that point of view that this person might show tendencies of some challenges when they grow up. The second one is delay in developmental stages. There are certain stages when a child is born, we expect that the child should be able to crawl at a particular age, maybe 6 months, or by 9 months, the child should be able to at least attempt to walk. And then by 1 year old, the child should be attempting to also speak, at least can say ma, ta, pa, things like that. So when you see absences in this, when there's a delay in speech or meeting every developmental stage, crawling, walking, speaking, then you know that child would definitely come down with dyslexia or are already showing signs of dyslexia. So delayed speech is one of the key signs to look out for when your child is growing up. And then secondly, when they are 2 years, so they don't speak in time, delayed speech. So they speak about 3 years and 4 years. That's when they start to speak, when their mates are already speaking. As a result of that, they get into school, they are not able to rhyme, they're not able to read. So teacher gives them something, they are not able to do it. So again, they are not meeting their developmental stages for reading. There's a particular stage of reading, at least 2-letter words, or rhyming even, making rhyming songs and things like that. But they delay, they have all delays in that. They delay to walk, they delay to crawl, they delay to speak, they delay to even learn rhymes in school. Then of course when they start now to read the alphabet, they struggle because they don't see the sound codes in the alphabet. They struggle with phonemic awareness. They can't see the sound codes in the alphabets of the letters they're presented. Therefore, they can't make sense out of it. While other children at an early stage, maybe the age of 5 and 6, are beginning to call alphabet, read alphabets, and even count. They will struggle with it. They struggle with counting, they struggle with making sense of alphabets and the rest of that. So you see those kind of delays. And then in class, as they grow, from the age of 8, they are always the last in class to copy notes from the board, because they have a brain-to-hand coordination problem. What their brain sees and their hand does not coordinate. So they're always slow. They have a processing speed problem. They can't process fast, so they don't copy their notes fast. And so teachers are always cleaning off. When they come back from school, when the parents check their notes, they will always notice that their notes are incomplete because they are always the last. And then they can't catch up with the teacher. That's again one sign that you'll notice. When your child starts coming back home with incomplete notes, then it's a sign that the child is not processing at a speed that they should be able to process at that age. And then of course, taking too long on assignment, they give them a homework to go and do. Wow. They will spend the last, others can spend like 15-20 minutes to do that homework, but they will spend hours. And then parents interpret, oh, he's lazy, he doesn't want to do. No, it's not a question of he doesn't want to, he can't. He's struggling with it. So there's a difference between what they're able to do and what they are not able to do. Then parents say, or teachers even in school say, oh, he's just being lazy. No, they're not being lazy. They work twice as hard. What it takes other people 15 minutes to do, they will take them about 1 hour. Which is why we always advocate that they should give them accommodation in class, which is give them extra time to do whatever they are doing in school.
During your explanations, you pointed out some signs and symptoms. Can a child be dyslexic as a result of emotional trauma or accidents?
Yes, I have seen 2 adult cases where, in fact, 2 adults and 1 teenager whose condition was as a result of a traumatic event in their family. The 2 adults said, one of them said he lost his father, he was very close with his father, and as a result of that, when his father passed, he just thought that what was life again without his father? So that in itself led to a traumatic injury in his brain and emotions, so he couldn't even pay attention to school. The teenage girl I'm referring to also did the same thing. When her father passed, her mother couldn't get her to do anything else. She always crying and looking for the father. Right. The other adult I mentioned now said when he got to university, after second year in university, he saw the way it was going. He struggled through secondary school. He started struggling in university. And in second year, he said, listen, if I continue like this, I will fail. So that was when he started to sit up And then he found that what he was not able to do, other mates were doing. So he decided to make friends with every smart child in the class so they can teach him. He understands better when his fellow students teach him. When the lecturer teaches him, he can't. So yes, when the people have psychological conditions and trauma at home, it could affect them emotionally. And of course, depends on the gravity of that emotional impact. It can also lead to a traumatic brain injury.
Okay, can you please shed more light on this? Oftentimes you see some people, they are so fluent, they can, relate with you, but when it comes to reading and writing, it is so difficult for them to do. Can you please shed more light on this?
Exactly, that was the case of my son. I think, as I mentioned always, I came to this because my son at age 9 was struggling. He speaks well. He's what the psychologists call an A-type personality. Personable. Whenever you meet him, he's so warm and he speaks very well. But don't ask him to write anything. So that's where the problem is. Writing, spelling, reading, and comprehension was his challenge. But every other thing he does well. He can engage you wherever he enters. Leadership, he takes leadership automatically. He's a leader, a born leader, he will take it. That's their characteristics. They take on leadership. They have leadership characteristics. So they do act in those ways. But their challenge is reading. Now, think about our educational system. Educational system is measured by reading, writing, spelling, and comprehension. But these people don't work in that way. Again, because they are also very literal or auditory, they hide their challenges in their ability to speak good English and convince people. So people see them and say, no, it can't be you. When they even tell people I have dyslexia, they say, no, it can't be. You're just forming something for yourself. No, dyslexia is actually in their brain. And as I say, they have average and above average intelligence. So it's not a question of intelligence at all. It's just that is the way their brain is wired. So that's why these days we are talking more about neurological differences rather than call it dyslexia as such, because they are neurologically different. Now, among dyslexics, we have found the greatest world entrepreneurs. It's measured and said that 40% of the world's billionaires are dyslexic. 40% of the world's billionaires are dyslexic, which means that dyslexia is an advantage. Dyslexia has an advantage that enables them to be successful entrepreneurs. And that advantage is their ability to see things that other people don't see. I want to say other people, meaning people who read to understand. They also take a lot of risks, calculated risks, which other people don't take. Other people will have to measure and weigh the pros and cons of an action. Once it is an idea, they get and jump on it. And then, of course, finally, they profit from it. Because, one of the world's greatest dyslexics says, when was the last time you turned your fantasy to reality? Richard Branson turns all his fantasies to reality and cause people to pay for it. Yeah.
What's the difference between dyslexia, autism, attention disorder, ADD, and can a child be autistic and dyslexic at the same time?
Good question. Yes, a child can be dyslexic and autistic at the same time. Now, autism is characterized by 3 or 4 different things. The key one that everybody focuses on is social interaction. Autistic children learn to keep to themselves. They don't like to interact, even at home with their siblings. They always want to be on their own. That's social interaction. All right, and then they also try to avoid eye contact. When you see an autistic child, they always try to avoid eye contact. All right, that's one characteristic. That's in their behavioral skills. Then there's the communication skills. They sometimes will lack language skills as well. So in that sense, they have a delay in language, just like dyslexics have delay in language. But more importantly, is their cognitive skill. This is where there's a converge between dyslexia and autism, because both of them are based on the cognitive skills of both disorders. So a person with autism would have a cognitive skill weakness, and a person with dyslexia will have the same cognitive skill weakness. So it is possible for someone who is autistic to also have cognitive skill weaknesses. It is also possible for them to just have autism and not dyslexia. So when those happen, we say they're comorbid. They occur at the same time. So you can have someone who has comorbidity, as we call it in psychology. He has this condition that is comorbiding with another one, which is why also ADHD comes in. ADHD, attention deficiency hyperactivity disorder. Again, that's a brain condition. The reason why they have that hyperactivity and attention condition is that attention is a brain condition. There is also, put in a very layman's sense, there's also electronic currents that are flowing through their brain, especially from the back of their head to the front of their heads. The frontal lobe is the place where reading, writing, and reading takes place. So when too much electric current coming to the front of their heads, they tend to be distracted, lack focus, and concentrate. So one of the things we do in brain training is to train their brain to be able to moderate that influence of those electronic currents. So someone can be autistic and has attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity. Someone can also be dyslexic and show those tendencies. So that's why they say they're comorbid. Now, which is why we tell parents, and some of them show very similar signs and symptoms. So we tell parents and others, say, please do a professional assessment so that you can differentiate one from the other. Otherwise, you will just get a label. If you don't do a professional assessment, you get a label to say, oh, this child is this person is that. And then if there's a misdiagnosis, there will be, again, a misintervention. So instead of intervening in the right place, you will be intervening in a wrong. So rather than, as we say, of course, dyslexia is not a disease. And so there's no cure for it. But you intervene and help the person to get skills that they are able then to manage their situation for the rest of their lives.
Are there types of dyslexia?
Dyslexia, like most other disorders, is a spectrum disorder. There is, in a spectrum, even when we do a pre-assessment, one of our assessment tools shows the condition. If the person scores less on the scale of 1 to 200, if the person scores 50 or less, we say the person has no dyslexia because it is a spectrum. If you score 51 to 80, we say it is mild. 81 to 100, it is moderate. 100 to 120, it is severe. 120 and above, it's profound. So it's a spectrum disorder. You can have mild dyslexia. You can have severe dyslexia. You can have profound dyslexia. Again, a professional assessment is the only way to differentiate this. And so we can cherry pick all the characteristics that you show and put them together and measure on the scale where you fall. And when we identify exactly where you fall, then we are more able to intervene in those particular areas, so that when we are not treating or we're not intervening in the wrong area and doing the wrong, based on that wrong diagnosis.
Okay. How true is the fact that dyslexia is much more common in boys than in girls?
That's the general tendency. The reason is that, as you know, girls are socialized to internalize more than the boys. So for instance, if a girl has attention, most of the time when we come here and tell parents that their girl child has attention deficit disorder, she said no, she doesn't show it, she's not, no, we say no, it's not whether she shows it or not. That's what the results of our assessment is showing. So they are taught to internalize, sit like a girl, don't behave like that, girls don't do that. So their socialization inhibits them from displaying, oh, boys are allowed to run around. So it's easier to say that boy is showing those tendencies than the girls. But the research is out, there's no clear-cut differences. But the general tendency is to say that for every 3 boys who are dyslexic, 5 girls are not.
Seek early medical help today. Stop guessing and put your child's skills to test today. Ben Arikpo has been diagnosing dyslexia. He is an applied psychologist and a brain trainer. Sound Health continues with trending and home essentials. Please stay with us. The program continues. Ben Arikpo has been taking us through how to cope with dyslexia. He's an applied psychologist and a brain trainer. We'll bring you the concluding part next week. Please stay with us.